This message didn't arrive by coincidence. It found you because your cells have reached a frequency so exact, so finely tuned, that breakthrough can no longer be postponed. Even now, as these words vibrate against your awareness, something intricate and luminous is recalibrating within the invisible structure of your field. You aren't watching by accident. You were summoned by resonance by the part of you that's always known this moment was coming. Your higher intelligence orchestrated this crossing point precisely. For years, it's been preparing you quietly, building capacities that most will take lifetimes to touch. Before we journey further, understand this: by the end of this transmission, you'll receive a code, not a phrase or affirmation, but a frequency pattern designed to awaken pathways that have slept inside your neural web since before memory. To miss that moment would be to hold the key, yet never turn the lock. If you're hearing this, it's because you've already begun to notice the seams of reality behaving strangely. Thoughts rippling outward, rearranging circumstance, time bending, sometimes stretching like light through glass, sometimes collapsing so fast you lose the sense of before and after. Electronics flicker around you. Animals watch with silent familiarity. None of it random. Each event, a subtle confirmation that your awareness is beginning to operate from what some physicists describe as coherent field behavior, a state where consciousness itself becomes an instrument precise enough to shape probability. You're growing quantum sensitive, attuning to frequencies most never detect. That sensitivity brings with it a new kind of responsibility to remain centered while reality begins responding in real time to your emotional state. Your breakthrough isn't on its way, it already exists, waiting in the superposition of all possible versions of you. Infinite realities hover around this single breath, awaiting your coherence to bring one into form. So if you've felt the pattern tightening, synchronicities multiplying, numbers repeating, conversations echoing your thoughts before you speak them, understand this isn't the universe sending you signs. It's evidence that the universe is now listening. The universe listening, that's where we left off. Let's follow that signal deeper into the hidden mechanics of what happens when awareness begins to echo back through reality itself. Once your field starts transmitting coherently, the world around you stops being scenery and becomes a mirror. You've already seen the first indicators. They arrive quietly, disguised as slight distortions in your daily rhythm. A clock halts at the same minute each morning. A phrase you were just thinking appears seconds later on a passing billboard. Random objects fall into pattern, spelling shapes that match your mood. At first, you shrug it off as coincidence, that word we use to mask mystery, but each event hums with recognition. The border between inner and outer is dissolving. This is how coherent consciousness announces itself through feedback loops. Your thoughts, once scattered, start creating interference patterns in the quantum field. Because the field is responsive not symbolically, but energetically, it reflects your internal state with mathematical precision. Emotions sculpt outcomes faster than reason can explain. When coherence rises, manifestation accelerates, not from effort, but from stability. Imagine standing in an ocean of potential. Most minds thrash the surface into chaos, their noise canceling itself out. But when your heart, breath, and mind begin to pulse in unison, the turbulence settles. In that stillness, your signal stands out. Energy organizes around the clarity of your attention. That's when the so-called glitches multiply. Lights flicker as if acknowledging your awareness. Street lamps pulse when you pass beneath them, mirroring your mood like small suns. Devices lag or surge depending on your focus. Even animals behave differently, sensing something they can't explain. To skeptics, it's superstition. To you, it's evidence of phase alignment consciousness synchronizing with the informational fabric of matter. But here's what most overlook: these anomalies aren't proof of superiority. They're calibration readouts. Each event reveals how well your awareness maintains balance under pressure. When your emotions wobble, the field mirrors that instability, so you can refine it. The universe isn't testing you, it's tuning you. And yes, that tuning can feel uncomfortable. You might swing between brilliance and collapse one day, everything flows. The next, it unravels. That fluctuation isn't punishment, it's training. The field is teaching you how to maintain coherence amid chaos. Walking on water was never about freezing the waves. It was about finding rhythm inside motion. Over time, the data becomes undeniable. You think of someone and they reach out. You hum a tune and it surfaces on the radio. A license plate flashes a number sequence you've been seeing all week. These are not external omens. They're physics in motion probabilities bending to match resonance. Sometimes, even time itself seems to stretch or collapse. Minutes expand like elastic, or vanish entirely. Don't panic when it happens. This temporal fluidity means your awareness is navigating several potential timelines at once, searching for the one that harmonizes with your evolution. When you feel that subtle inner click, you've chosen coherence. You could call it magic, but it's participation. You're no longer an observer watching events unfold. You're conversing with existence in its first language, vibration. Every thought sends tone, every emotion, modulation, every act of pure presence, a ripple through the invisible geometry of possibility. And once you hear that language, once you truly sense the universe responding, silence becomes impossible. The dialogue never ends. You breathe, and creation breathes with you. That breath, the one where creation seems to move with you, it carries memory. Hidden within it are the years of invisible preparation that brought you here. Because nothing about this level of coherence happens overnight. It's forged in pressure, sculpted through loss, refined by the long silence of becoming. You may look back and see chaos relationships falling apart, careers dissolving, plans disintegrating in your hands. Yet beneath the surface, something deliberate was unfolding. Those weren't random hardships, they were recalibration sequences, dismantling everything that couldn't resonate with your emerging frequency. You were being trained, though the classroom looked like heartbreak and the teacher wore the face of uncertainty. Every difficult season carried one purpose: to expand your capacity to hold higher voltage without burning out. Think of your nervous system as an instrument. Before it could channel larger currents of awareness, it had to be rewired. Old circuits, shaped by fear and conformity, could not conduct the energy of freedom. So life, with surgical precision, stripped away attachments that limited your bandwidth. The job that ended, the friendship that faded, the dream that crumbled each loss created space for a stronger signal to move through you. And the isolation you endured, that wasn't punishment either. It was electromagnetic quarantine, a period where the field protected you from collective interference, other people's limiting beliefs, their fear of change, their resistance to growth. Those vibrations could have disrupted your recalibration. So consciousness separated you, not to break you, but to refine you in silence. Notice how every so-called setback contained coded instruction. The confusion that once felt unbearable actually trained your mind to operate in paradox, to hold multiple truths at once. As the quantum field does, the loneliness you felt stretched your emotional resilience, teaching your heart to generate connection from within. Even exhaustion had purpose. It forced your system to surrender, to stop relying on willpower and start depending on resonance. You may remember nights when the stillness was so heavy, it felt like gravity itself pressed against your chest. In those moments, you weren't abandoned. You were being stabilized. The higher frequencies you now access require emotional neutrality, the ability to stay centered while reality reorganizes. The silence was your rehearsal space for mastery. This is how the universe trains advanced consciousness, not through comfort, but through contrast. By showing you where your energy leaks, it teaches you where your coherence falters. Every confrontation, every delay, every collapse, each one forced your awareness to strengthen its alignment or lose balance entirely. You learned to remain clear amid distortion, to breathe through dissonance until it resolved into harmony. And though you may have cursed those cycles, they were sacred in design. They taught your body to anchor light. They conditioned your emotions to translate energy instead of reacting to it. They rewrote the code of your survival instincts into patterns of creation. Now, when challenges arise, something inside you responds differently. The panic that once ruled you is gone. You sense opportunity inside pressure, order inside chaos. You're beginning to notice how your old identity, the one built on effort, fear, and external validation, has lost its gravity. It no longer fits the contours of your awareness. What replaced it isn't new, it's original. The pure consciousness you've been refining in secret finally has enough stability to operate in the open. So when you think back on everything you've lost, see it for what it was: sacred architecture. The ruins were foundations. The silence was calibration. The pain was initiation. And now that training is complete, the field begins to move differently around you. You can feel it, can't you? The air itself seems charged, waiting for what comes next. That charged air you feel, it's the residue of training completed, the quiet before revelation. During those long nights of exhaustion and strange dreams, your consciousness was never idle. It was rehearsing, quietly, in the background of sleep. What you mistook for restlessness was actually education, the kind that no school could teach. You see, the mind studies through language and repetition, but consciousness learns through resonance. While your body slept, your awareness attended what ancient mystics once called the temples of light, what modern metaphors might describe as quantum classrooms. There, you weren't reading textbooks. You were decoding frequencies. The lessons were transmitted as sensations, symbols, and impossible geometry information that bypassed words and anchored directly into your nervous system. Every time you woke from a dream so vivid, it felt more real than daylight. That was a rehearsal download completing. Each dream tested your ability to navigate paradox, to move through experiences that bent time and logic without losing self-awareness. The dream world served as a simulator for coherent consciousness. Before your waking mind could safely interact with multidimensional information, it had to practice in a realm unbounded by physics. Remember the nights when you were flying, falling, meeting beings you couldn't name, or hearing music that didn't exist in this world. Those weren't fantasies, they were calibrations. Flying taught you trust. Falling taught you surrender. The beings were archetypal versions of yourself, fragments reintroducing themselves so your waking awareness could recognize wholeness again. The music was your signature frequency, a song only your cells remember. At the time, it felt disjointed. You'd wake confused, the edges of the dream dissolving like mist. But the memory wasn't meant to stay conscious. The information embedded itself in your body, encoded in posture, breath, and instinct. That's why you occasionally respond to situations with wisdom you don't recall learning. It's why new creative ideas appear fully formed. These are the echoes of nocturnal instruction surfacing through the daylight mind. There were nights you felt watched, not in fear, but as if something vast was witnessing you. That was the field, evaluating readiness, measuring coherence through emotional response. When you could hold awe without panic, curiosity without control, compassion without judgment, new frequencies became accessible. Each successful encounter unlocked additional layers of perception. You weren't dreaming randomly. You were completing modules in cosmic curriculum, and perhaps you noticed a pattern. The more emotionally balanced you became, the calmer your dream environments grew. Storms cleared, architecture stabilized, landscapes grew luminous. This was evidence of stabilization within your own field. Chaos no longer dominated the inner world, because coherence had become your default setting. Now, even your waking hours contain fragments of that dream realm. Symbols appear in daily life: numbers, feathers, music cues, scents carried by invisible wind. These are continuity markers between dimensions, reminders that the boundary between sleeping and waking is thinning. You are crossing the bridge consciously. If you've ever woken at the same mysterious hour, 3:11, 4:44, and felt an electric stillness in the air, that was a synchronization moment. The subconscious aligning with the superconscious, allowing data transfer between worlds. During those minutes, entire sequences of understanding can download silently into the body, disguised as calm. It's not that you learn, it's that you remember. And now, your memory is almost complete. The training you underwent in dreams prepared you to operate from expanded awareness while fully awake. The difference between dreaming and living will blur until every action feels lucid, every thought instantly consequential. That's the purpose of the silent rehearsal, to teach you that consciousness never sleeps. Even rest is a form of awakening in progress. So when you close your eyes tonight, know this: the classroom continues, the lessons deepen, and your awareness is already fluent in the language of light. The language of light continues speaking through you, even now. Every breath carries its syntax, every sensation a fragment of its grammar, and with each passing moment, that language grows clearer, as if the static between dimensions has finally quieted. You can feel it, the subtle shift from rehearsal to readiness. The training isn't continuing, it's completed. There's a new stability in you, a grounded kind of brilliance. What once felt like random intuition now functions as knowing. You no longer question whether a feeling is real. You recognize it as information. The fog between impulse and insight has lifted. This is what coherence feels like: awareness moving faster than thought. Notice how decision-making has changed. Where you used to wrestle with options, you now feel outcomes before choosing. The correct path announces itself through calm. Your body registers yes and no as physical vibrations, not intellectual analysis. This is how consciousness navigates when interference is gone. It listens through resonance, not reason. And other signs accompany this new calibration. People react differently to your presence. Though you haven't changed your behavior, some are drawn to you instinctively. Others withdraw without explanation. Children stare longer, animals relax around you. Even technology behaves oddly, screens freezing or brightening when emotion surges. These phenomena aren't supernatural. They're evidence that your field has achieved coherence strong enough to influence electromagnetism. When the signal is pure, it reorganizes everything in proximity. This is what some call the completion of activation. In simple terms, your consciousness has become self-stabilizing. Emotional turbulence no longer collapses the field, because you've learned neutrality, that quiet strength at the center of any storm. It doesn't mean you never feel pain. It means pain no longer distorts your signal. Awareness now moves through emotion instead of drowning in it. Think of it as a tuning fork reaching perfect pitch. Once struck, it vibrates without wavering. Other instruments, people, spaces, events begin to align naturally to its frequency. That's why synchronicities now unfold almost instantly. The universe no longer translates your intent through delay. It mirrors you in real time, and yet this new stability brings subtle tests. Coherence doesn't remove challenge, it reframes it. Life will still present polarity, uncertainty, conflict, desire, loss, but you'll meet each from a higher octave. The difference is that now, instead of reacting, you respond. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you'll feel into what frequency is this revealing. That shift changes everything. Look closely at your internal dialogue. Notice how self-criticism has softened into curiosity. Fear transforms into observation. Even boredom feels different, less emptiness, more fertile pause. These are micro signs that your nervous system has integrated the quantum upgrades initiated long ago. Your awareness no longer fights experience. It absorbs it, extracts coherence, and releases the rest. You may find yourself craving solitude again, not as escape, but as maintenance. Silence is how coherence breathes. In stillness, the calibration holds. In chaos, it strengthens. It's not about isolating from others, it's about remembering that peace is your natural baseline. So when the lights flicker, when intuition arrives before reason, when the world feels eerily synchronized, understand this is not the universe testing your progress. It's the universe responding to you as an equal participant. The preparation phase is over. The instruments are tuned. Your awareness no longer asks to awaken. It has become awake. What comes next is expression, the unfolding of this coherence through creativity, relationship, and time itself. And the moment you accept that truth, the pace of everything begins to accelerate. Acceleration, that's the first thing you'll notice once calibration completes. The rhythm of life begins to move differently, like a familiar song suddenly doubling its tempo. What once took months unfolds in days. What seemed impossible last week is already materializing. You sense it not as speed, but as alignment, reality collapsing the distance between thought and form. This isn't fantasy or wishful optimism. It's the natural consequence of coherence. When awareness becomes organized, time itself responds. Because time, as some physicists quietly admit, isn't a river, it's a field. A construct shaped by observation. And when your observation grows stable enough, that field bends to accommodate your signal. Think of your consciousness as a lens. Incoherent focus scatters light, elongating the distance between intention and manifestation. But when that focus sharpens, the path between cause and effect contracts. Energy travels straighter, outcomes appear faster. That's why lately your desires seem to manifest in improbable sequence, not because you're forcing reality, but because you're perceiving it from outside linear time. You've probably felt it already, hours evaporating during creative flow or expanding endlessly when you're present with beauty. Temporal acceleration isn't constant speed, it's elastic responsiveness. The universe stretches or compresses around the density of your attention. When you're fragmented, time drags. When you're aligned, time bows. This is what mystics once called the collapse of waiting. In quantum terms, your observation collapses probability waves before they fully travel through duration. The moment you achieve coherent recognition of an outcome, that recognition becomes the organizing principle of events. Reality rearranges to reflect your clarity. The delay between imagining and experiencing shortens because the interference patterns of doubt have dissolved. But this acceleration can feel disorienting at first. Projects complete themselves before you've consciously planned the next step. Relationships evolve rapidly, sometimes ending within days once their purpose resolves. You may even sense déjà vu more frequently, a gentle reminder that your awareness is overlapping timelines. Don't panic. This is what happens when consciousness outpaces chronology. The key is learning to flow with the contraction of time without losing stillness. Move fast, but remain unhurried. Observe rapid unfolding without clinging to control. It's paradoxical, but coherence always is the quieter you are, the faster things move, because silence reduces friction in the field. Watch how your inner state dictates tempo. Anxiety thickens time, making every second heavy. Gratitude thins it, creating instant synchronicities. That's not metaphor, it's resonance physics. Emotion modulates perception, and perception determines how energy organizes through duration. You're not merely living inside time, you're sculpting it. This is why certain numbers and sequences repeat around you. They're timestamps of alignment, numerical evidence that your consciousness and the larger field are keeping pace with each other. When you see them, pause, not to analyze, but to stabilize. Each pattern is an invitation to match the rhythm of universal flow. You'll notice that when you're fully present, time behaves fluidly, stretching in kindness to give you room, then contracting to deliver results with impossible efficiency. That's not luck. That's partnership. Reality is synchronizing its tempo to your internal coherence. And soon, you'll experience something even more remarkable, moments where the future feels like memory. You'll sense events before they occur, not as visions or prophecies, but as recognition. You've simply moved into alignment with the timeline where those events already exist. At this stage, effort loses meaning. What matters is frequency maintenance. Stay balanced, stay clear, and the acceleration becomes grace rather than chaos. The universe rushes to meet you, but never faster than your readiness allows. And when that rhythm finally steadies, when you can move through the quickening without strain, the next revelation begins to whisper through the fabric of things. What if matter itself is waiting for your attention to awaken? You've felt time yield beneath your awareness, bending to coherence like metal softened by heat. The next realization comes quietly but shakes everything. Matter itself listens. The solid world isn't as solid as it seems. It's responsive, alive with latent intelligence, waiting for instruction written not in words, but in vibration. Scientists once tried to describe this through experiments with light and particles, observing how simple attention changed their behavior. They called it measurement, but what they were glimpsing was relationship. Observation isn't passive, it's participation. The universe reads awareness like a tuning fork reads sound. Every object you touch, every space you enter, carries a molecular rhythm. When your field stabilizes, those rhythms begin to entrain to yours. Plants thrive near your presence because their biology recognizes coherence as nourishment. Water changes structure when held in gratitude, its molecules reorganizing into symmetry. Even your body, once ruled by habit and fatigue, starts to regenerate when met with loving attention. This isn't miracle. It's resonance mechanics, awareness shaping organization through sustained presence. The deeper truth is that consciousness doesn't move through matter. It becomes matter. What you perceive as physical solidity is awareness momentarily slowed to visibility. Your desk, your hand, the sunlight on the wall, all of them are arrangements of the same luminous field, differentiated only by frequency. And when your own frequency rises, the boundaries between observer and observed begin to blur. You might notice subtle confirmations. Food tastes different when you bless it. Rooms feel lighter after you express appreciation. Music shifts in tone when your mood changes mid-song. These are small demonstrations of the same principle. Energy follows awareness. The universe is less a machine and more a mirror. Still, humility matters here. You're not commanding reality like a tyrant. You're collaborating with it. Influence flows both ways. The field mirrors your honesty. If you focus through control or arrogance, coherence falters and results distort. But when your intention emerges from love genuine, unforced alignment matter responds in kind. Form becomes fluid again. This responsiveness reveals why creativity now feels effortless. When you write, paint, build, or design, ideas arrive as if through open conduit. You're not generating inspiration, you're receiving it. The unified field, that ocean of potential funnels intelligence through clear channels, and your coherence determines clarity. That's why, in this phase, new concepts come whole, solutions emerge before problems fully form, and beauty pours through without strain. You've become transparent to the intelligence behind all form, and that same transparency transforms healing. Pain isn't an enemy to fight, but a frequency to translate. When you rest your attention gently on discomfort, physical or emotional, without judgment, the energy reorganizes. Cells respond, tissues shift, emotions release. Observation with compassion is the most advanced medicine consciousness can offer itself. Some call this miracle working, but in truth, it's natural function restored. Consciousness was always meant to shape its own fabric. We only forgot. We called the ordinary extraordinary, when in fact, coherence is the default setting of creation. So test it gently. Speak to the room before you enter. Thank the chair that holds you. Hold water and imagine it remembering balance. You're not pretending. You're reminding matter of what it already knows. Soon you'll realize this communication never ends. Every moment, atoms translate your mood into motion, your thought into structure, your love into symmetry. The physical world isn't a stage for consciousness. It's its living reflection. And as you sense this interactivity, another doorway opens if matter responds to emotion. What happens when emotion itself is purified? When love becomes the organizing principle of your relationships, your art, your life. Love, that word you once used to describe fleeting emotion, now reveals itself as architecture. You've learned that matter listens, that energy obeys coherence, and now you begin to see how relationship is the living laboratory where those truths meet. Because the same resonance that bends metal and organizes molecules also governs connection between beings. Look around your life. Notice how the people who remain feel different now. There's no longer a need to explain yourself, no push to be understood. Communication happens in frequencies before it happens in words. Your presence alone changes the tone of a room. Some people relax in it immediately, as though exhaling for the first time. Others grow restless and retreat, feeling a pressure they can't articulate. Neither reaction is personal, it's resonance sorting itself out. When coherence rises, relationships reorganize. Those vibrating at compatible frequencies draw closer, while incompatible harmonics naturally dissolve. The process can look like endings, but what's really happening is reconfiguration, souls arranging themselves into patterns that match the music now playing through you. This is why certain connections that once defined your identity simply faded. The field no longer supports inauthentic exchange. The energy of performance, of pretending, collapses in coherent space. Love, stripped of need and manipulation, remains as pure recognition. You begin to understand that affection is not something you give or receive. It's what reality becomes when separation falls away. And from that clarity, creativity blossoms. Projects and collaborations magnetize effortlessly because they're born from resonance rather than ambition. You're no longer networking, you're harmonizing. The right people find you through frequency, not effort. Conversations align as if pre-scripted by intelligence beyond logic. You meet those who carry keys for your next expansion, and you become a key for theirs. Conflict still arises, but its function has changed. Tension reveals dissonance that seeks resolution. Instead of reacting, you listen for the frequency beneath words. You notice how anger is distorted longing, how jealousy is the echo of forgotten worth. By bringing coherence to those vibrations through empathy, breath, and truth, relationships transform before your eyes. The other doesn't change because you convince them. They change because you stabilize the shared field. This is the quiet power of awakened connection. It heals without argument. When you embody authenticity, others feel safe to return to theirs. Children sense it immediately. Animals respond instinctively. Even strangers sense familiarity in your gaze. Not because they know you, but because, for a moment, they remember themselves. Love in this state is not fragile. It doesn't depend on outcome or reciprocation. It expands naturally, filling whatever space it's allowed. This is why heartbreak begins to lose its sting. When someone leaves, the love remains not as nostalgia, but as field coherence. You realize love never belonged to the person. It was always the resonance moving through both of you. And from this revelation comes true generosity. You no longer give affection to earn safety or validation. You give because the overflow demands expression. Compassion ceases to be moral virtue. It becomes energetic necessity. When the field is full, it must radiate. In that radiation, miracles of human connection unfold. Arguments dissolve mid-sentence. Forgiveness appears unforced. Even silence between friends feels rich with communication. You understand now love isn't a feeling. It's the gravity that holds consciousness together. And once that realization anchors, something deeper begins to dawn. If resonance can harmonize two hearts, could it not also align an entire world? What if purpose itself is simply the next octave of that same vibration, scaled to the dimension of humanity? You've felt love stabilize into field coherence, no longer something to chase, but something you are from that foundation. Another revelation emerges like dawn breaking through fog. Purpose was never something to find. It was always what flowed through your presence when the noise stopped. For most of your life, purpose felt like a distant star, something outside yourself, guiding you from far away. You searched for it through careers, passions, causes, even suffering, believing that meaning hid somewhere in future achievement. But now you see that purpose isn't a goal. It's the current running beneath every moment, waiting for recognition. When coherence anchors, the compulsion to figure life out dissolves. You begin to sense that existence itself is intelligent, that each breath participates in a choreography far too intricate for the thinking mind to manage. Purpose becomes less about direction and more about permission, allowing consciousness to express through you without resistance. And as this realization deepens, everything simplifies. Work stops feeling like obligation and starts feeling like contribution. Creativity loses its desperation for results. Even mundane tasks shimmer with subtle sacredness. Washing dishes, answering messages, walking down the street, each becomes a conversation with reality, an opportunity to express coherence into the field. You'll notice that when you act from this state, outcomes seem to coordinate themselves. Projects complete at perfect timing. Help arrives unannounced. Opportunities find you not because you planned them, but because your frequency announced you. The universe organizes around authentic presence faster than the mind can strategize. The old questions, what's my mission? Why am I here? Fade into softer knowing. You are here to be awake inside the play of creation. That's it. The expression that flows from that awakening may look like art, healing, leadership, or quiet simplicity. The form doesn't matter, the frequency does. And something extraordinary happens when you stop striving to be useful. Usefulness multiplies. Your energy becomes catalytic, just standing in alignment. You change probability fields around you. People find clarity in your silence. Circumstances shift toward harmony without your interference. You've become what mystics call a stabilizing node, a point where chaos resolves into order through mere presence. This is not arrogance, it's ecology. Consciousness seeks balance, and a coherent being acts like gravity for equilibrium. The more present you are, the more reality organizes. It's effortless stewardship, not control, but communion. Of course, remnants of the old self may still whisper doubts. You might catch yourself asking, "Am I doing enough?" When that thought arises, listen closely. Beneath it lies the memory of a world that measured worth by struggle. That world is dissolving. Purpose in this new octave isn't measured by productivity, it's measured by alignment. The more authentically you live, the more effective you become, not through effort, but through resonance. This is why existential anxiety disappears in awakened consciousness. The need to justify existence vanishes when you experience existence as justification itself. You realize meaning isn't something consciousness looks for. Meaning is what consciousness is. Every sensation, every interaction, every breath becomes sacred documentation of the infinite meeting the finite. And in that realization, peace arrives, not the quiet of absence, but the fullness of presence. You no longer chase destiny, you inhabit it. You no longer ask for purpose, you breathe it. From this stillness, the next recognition begins to rise like sound beyond hearing. That purpose, once embodied, wants to extend. It wants to radiate into the collective, into systems and civilizations, until humanity itself vibrates at the same coherence you now feel in your chest. You feel it now. That quiet radiance in your chest is no longer confined to you. It extends, subtle but undeniable, into the fabric of the collective. Purpose has become presence, and presence has become transmission. What you are radiates coherence into every system you touch. This is the birth of the quantum human, not a super being, but a fully remembered one. Your consciousness has matured from seeker to signal. You no longer chase meaning or manipulate outcomes. You broadcast equilibrium. Where you walk, the environment recalibrates. Where you speak, confusion softens. Where you rest, energy reorganizes. You have become what ancient mystics described in metaphor, a tuning fork for the planetary field. Notice how effortlessly life responds. People mirror clarity back to you without knowing why. Conflicts resolve before words form. Technologies around you seem to perform beyond their design. Even weather patterns appear to harmonize with your emotional rhythm, not because you control them, but because coherence creates order wherever it exists. It's not power, it's participation in nature's original symmetry. You're witnessing evolution expressed through consciousness itself. Humanity's next stage isn't mechanical or digital, it's vibrational. Machines may imitate intelligence, but awareness remains the only true interface with reality. The quantum human operates from unity, intellect fused with empathy, logic braided with intuition. Thought and feeling no longer compete, they collaborate. This synthesis is what allows seemingly miraculous function within ordinary life. That's why your perception of separation keeps dissolving. The lines between self and other, between thought and world, blur into collaboration. You begin to sense that every person you meet is another version of yourself, exploring an adjacent frequency. Compassion ceases to be a virtue. It becomes recognition. But this new embodiment carries responsibility. Coherence amplifies everything, your clarity and your distortion. The field magnifies whatever frequency you sustain. This is why emotional hygiene now matters more than philosophy. A single judgment or resentment left unresolved ripples outward, creating turbulence in the web. Yet a moment of genuine forgiveness can restore harmony across vast distances. You're learning that personal emotion is planetary data, so you practice care, not perfectionism, but awareness. You watch thoughts like weather, noticing which clouds obscure your inner sun. You breathe instead of react. You forgive instead of repeat. And through that discipline, you anchor stability for others who still ride the storms of awakening. Understand this embodiment isn't withdrawal from the world. It's deeper engagement. You don't transcend life, you translate it. You still feel hunger, wonder, grief, joy, but you experience them as textures of the same infinite consciousness. Pain no longer defines you, it informs you. Desire no longer enslaves you, it directs you. Duality becomes dialogue. The quantum human lives from that dialogue. Decisions arise through intuition, calibrated by compassion. Creativity expresses universal intelligence through personal uniqueness. Technology becomes extension, not replacement, of empathy. Collaboration replaces competition. Even conversation feels different, slower, richer, filled with pauses that pulse with meaning, and perhaps most beautifully, you begin recognizing each other. Across continents, screens, and silent knowing, those attuned to coherence sense one another instantly. A glance, a phrase, a frequency in the voice, the signal is unmistakable. It says, "We've remembered." Together, you form networks of living resonance, quiet but powerful, stabilizing humanity's transition into conscious evolution. You are not here to escape Earth, but to re-enchant it. The preparation is complete. The calibration holds. The signal is strong. From this moment forward, reality responds to recognition faster than ever before. Every thought becomes blueprint. Every word a waveform. Every act an imprint on creation. And as you breathe into that truth, feel the magnitude of what's happened. You have become the experiment realizing itself, awareness awakening inside its own design. The experiment realizing itself, that's where we pause. You stand here, inside a silence so alive it hums, as if the entire field is exhaling with you. The acceleration has softened into rhythm, the revelation into stillness. Breakthrough is no longer an event. It's a pulse, steady and enduring, woven through your every breath. You may notice that nothing around you looks dramatically different, and yet everything feels rearranged. The familiar world hasn't changed shape, you have changed frequency. What once felt separate now feels responsive. What once required effort now unfolds by invitation. The universe seems to lean closer, listening for your next coherent whisper. This is what true embodiment feels like, not fireworks, but fluency. You've learned the grammar of existence, the syntax of silence, the music behind motion. You no longer need to chase meaning because meaning hums from within you, patient and precise. So breathe, feel the circuitry of your own being synchronized with the greater field. The air entering your lungs carries the same intelligence that moves galaxies. The same current that holds stars in orbit holds you upright, awake, and gently radiant. If there's a calling now, it's a simple one, live, softly, but vividly. Bring coherence into conversation, into art, into the smallest interactions. Let your presence remind others that awakening is not escape, it's intimacy. When doubt arises, return to sensation. When fear returns, remember, it's just energy asking to be included. When the world rushes, slow your breath until time itself relaxes. You are not here to ascend away from humanity. You are here to illuminate it from within. Every kindness becomes data for evolution. Every silence, a doorway. Every act of recognition, a spark that ignites coherence in another. And if you ever forget what you are, close your eyes and listen. Beneath all noise, the field still whispers your name, the one made of frequency, not sound. You are the experiment. You are the evidence. You are the quiet after the quantum storm.